I can't see the look that passes between them, but both JMs yell, "Pull up!" at the same time. The pilot, not knowing the reason for the orders, reacts abruptly and sends me sprawling free of the JM holding on to me. I expect my container to burst open and prepare for a last-second expression of gratitude. But it doesn't, and I immediately press my back up against the wall of the plane, although it is impossible to get a secure purchase on the slippery floor, and there is nothing to grab onto. The JM gets on his knees beside me, slips a hand in between the fuselage and me, yells that he has it, whatever it is. AAD stands for Automatic Activation Device. Not everyone has one, but I wear a former student rig, so I do, and I know the student does, and, as it turns out, one of the jump masters does too. The AAD has a built-in altimeter and will automatically deploy the parachute at 1,000 feet if it isn't already out. Normally, it would be safe to have AADs turned on in a descending plane because they only activate over a certain rate of descent, which a descending plane doesn't normally reach. But because we're going down faster than usual, the risk of one or more of them deploying was very real. I know the cases where AADs have saved lives. If someone loses consciousness, or for any reason can't deploy their own chute, then the AAD will pop it for them. They still might have a hell of a landing, but not as bad as it could be. I also know of AAD failures and tragedies, including in-plane deployments. Not pretty. The primary JM, not the one with his hand holding my container closed, gives instructions to the pilot and makes sure the student is calm. He then gets up on his knees and turns off the student's AAD, which is accessed from the top of the rig. He crawls to me, turns mine off, and then stoops forward so I can turn his off without having to move away from the wall. Once the AADs are all off, we're able to land without further incident. When the plane has come to a complete stop, the JM with his hand on my back rolls me forward and secures my rig before letting me out of the plane. It would truly suck to go through all that and then have my rig pop open on the tarmac and pull me into a spinning propeller. I don't know if that can really happen, but I am in too good a mood to find out. No one on the ground knows there has been an incident yet, because the skydivers who jumped are only starting to land now, and they're a bit off target because they didn't wait for a perfect spot from which to jump. Of course, people on the ground quickly figure out that something is wrong when a plane lands with 4 skydivers still aboard. I get out of the plane and walk off into the grass, away from the plane and away from the approaching people. I don't want to talk. I don't want to spoil this wonderful moment. I could be involved in the sport of skydiving for an entire lifetime and never again have such an intense, hyper-alert experience. I'm still soaking in the wonder of it and don't want to waste this time yapping about it. I drop my rig and step out of it and stretch out my arms and let waves of gratitude flow through me. What a wonderful fucking world. What a wonderful fucking life. I stash my rig, which will have to be repacked anyway, and head off for a walk. I duck into some nearby woods and find a path and just amble along, replaying the experience and relishing the exhilaration. Half an hour later, I return to the main hangar and realize that everyone thinks I went off to be alone because I was so shaken by the experience. The whole thing is already well on its way to achieving the status of local legend, and my fellow jumpers quickly realize that I'm cool with it and happy to discuss it. I end up telling it half a dozen times that afternoon. A great additional benefit of the whole thing is that the DZ owner is so apologetic that he makes sure that I am scheduled to make every second jump run for the rest of the day. By the time dusk sets in and the plane is rolled back into the hangar, I've gone up 6 times and come down under Canopy 5, the most jumps I've ever made in a single day. And not realizing that I would have gladly paid extra for a day like this, they don't charge me a dime. All drop zones, in my experience, have fire pits. For a second night in a row, I find myself staring happily into the flames, this time with an entirely different group of people and in an entirely different role. I drink light beer, smoke cheap cigars, and listen raptly to high-flying tales of adventure and bravery and tragedy. This is a special breed of people, and I'm honored to sit among them. Okay, that was fun. Now, back to the Enlightenment stuff. Chapter 29. Layers. Concepts can at best only serve to negate one another, as one thorn is used to remove another, and then be thrown away. Words and language deal only with concepts, and cannot approach reality. Ramesh S. Balkskar. I get home after 8 o'clock and go straight upstairs to spend half an hour relaxing in the tub. Skydiving may not seem like a very physically demanding sport, especially since only 20 minutes out of the whole day was actually spent in free fall or under canopy. But by the end of the day at the DZ, I feel as if I've spent 8 hours digging ditches. Constant low-level tension, heat and sun, uncomfortable kneeling when repacking the chute, cramped 15 or 20-minute climbs in the plane, the abrupt deceleration when the chute anchors itself into the air, and the less than gentle landings can all contribute. The tub is a whirlpool and there's a stereo in the bathroom, so I'm able to listen to relaxing music while I luxuriate in the hot water with the pounding jets. After a while I turn the jets down, but leave the recirculating heater on and drift off for as sweet a nap as was ever had. When I come downstairs, I find that a late dinner is just wrapping up, so I commandeer the kitchen, close the doors, and begin the cleanup. I have almost nothing but good things to say about Sonea, but damn, that woman can trash a kitchen. She only does the cooking, never the cleaning afterward, so she's not motivated to minimize the mess. Chris comes in carrying a load of plates and glassware. Chris is okay in small doses. He tends to be very fixed in his opinions, so there's really no point in trying to teach him anything until he's able to clear out some room in his head. His teacup is full, in the Zen sense. No room for anything else. That doesn't stop me from teaching him, though. It's not my job to figure out where the words go once they leave my mouth. I'm sure Chris knows exactly why he's here with us, and I'm sure he's wrong. But he'll get what he came for despite not knowing what it is, and eventually he'll leave with it, though he'll be disappointed because he didn't get what he thought he came for. This is not terribly uncommon. I don't know why Chris is here, and I'm not all that interested. I don't think about anyone's reasons, real or imagined. That's not my job. My job is to speak, to transmit, to say what I know. Reception is out of my hands. I have no interest in the results because I already know the results. I'm enlightened. I know how it all turns out. Chris has his hand firmly on the tiller of his life. He's in control. He's making the decisions, and he's determining his own fate. Captain of his own destiny may be how he thinks of it, his own man. If I were some revered master in Japan, Chris is one of those guys who would slave in the kitchen for 10 years without ever speaking with me. If I had taught with results in mind, Chris would never be allowed to open a book or converse on spiritual matters until he pried his hands off the tiller. Rigid ego can scuttle the ship before it gets clear of the harbor. I've watched much smarter people than myself, much braver people than myself, break their ships fatally on the rocks because they were too full of themselves to release control. This stuff isn't about brains and balls. It's about desire and flow and purity of intent. "Hey," says Chris, like we're pals, "can I ask you something?" "Nope." "Excuse me?" "I like to do the dishes alone, Chris. Find me afterward, and we can discuss whatever you want." "Oh, okay. Hey, that's cool." I continue with the cleaning. When I bought the house, it had a perfectly good dishwasher, which I immediately took to the dump and replaced with additional counter and cupboard space. I don't have strong anti-technology feelings by any means, just an aversion to dishwashers. Cleaning a kitchen seems like one of life's little pleasures, and yes, I thought so back in the days before I had an army of little elves keeping the place tidy. Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh says that there are 2 ways to wash the dishes. The first is to wash the dishes in order to have clean dishes. The other is to wash the dishes in order to wash the dishes. I do it in order to wash the dishes. But since I spend maybe an hour a week in this attempt at mindfulness, I figure it's best not to make myself out as being a real, in-the-moment kind of guy. Many very bright people seem to agree that there's a great deal to be said for mindful action. But except for an occasional stint at the kitchen sink, I'm not one of them. Nor do I think of myself as one of those simple people who takes pleasure in the little things. In fact, if I can get back upstairs before Chris or anyone else snags me for some conversation, then I'll be spending the rest of my evening with Laura Croft, battling our way together through perilous Himalayan monasteries in search of the dagger of Zen. But will I make it upstairs before a student corners me? Not likely. As I continue cleaning, I'm amused to imagine a Tomb Raider-like game wherein a harried spiritual teacher has to battle his way through a maze of clamoring students in his bid to get to his well-appointed home theater room. Instead of weapons, however, the students would hurl questions of a spiritual nature at the beleaguered teacher, who must answer correctly in order to make progress. The game would be a sort of 21st century version of the old Japanese Dharma dueling, where enlightened guys would get into contests to see who could talk the talk better. Why did they do that, one might ask? Well, why not? Why am I teaching and writing a book? Just because. Gotta do something. If they still had Dharma dueling, I'd be happy to represent Iowa in my conference. Well, I'd at least subscribe to a newspaper and follow it in the spiritual sports pages. I digress. That's where my mind really goes when I wash the dishes. Not no mind, monkey mind. If I were one of those revered Japanese masters, I'd probably make myself slave in the kitchen for 10 years without ever speaking to me. I finish the kitchen and make my way upstairs. I get the PlayStation going and advance the game to the point where I left off last time. I am reminded that where I left off last time was at the beginning of a very tricky set of wall climbs and backward leaps that demand mid-air turns followed by grabbing an opposing wall. Failure, of course, results in a long fall and impalement on sharp sticks, which are, for good measure, set in a pool of bubbling lava. The trick is that there is no trick. You just have to do it 50 times and get killed 49. It can get a little frustrating. I know what you're thinking. You think that I'm bringing Lara Croft and the Tomb Raider game into this book as a method of introducing another analogy. You think I'm going to say that a soul develops through many lifetimes on Earth in the same way that in Tomb Raider